We didn't get an update that I think, expected to get this morning or late last night. And I mean, we all got out of bed, started our day, poured our coffee, scrolled through Twitter, checked out the news, went on YouTube, whatever you do to find and start your day and look for your Pittsburgh Steelers news. You want to know the one headline that was missing that maybe emerges at some point today, but at the time of recording this, at the time we're live, did not happen. The Pittsburgh Steelers didn't take a quarterback out to dinner who has a pro day today. And I don't know who did take that quarterback out to dinner. I would imagine somebody did. Somebody somewhere did. Or maybe nobody did so that they could all hide it. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, I have no idea if they're in Mississippi. Again, we'll find out today at about 11:45 a.m. when Mississippi's pro day, Ole Miss's pro day begins. But I can tell you right now that they didn't, as of the time of recording this, they didn't have dinner with the one Jaxson Dart, who everybody has their eyes on as a potential first-round pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And you could say that means nothing, but it means a lot in the city of Pittsburgh. These guys love to take their first-round picks out to dinner. They do it all the time. And you could go through the list. The list is long. TJ Watt, Broderick Jones, Kenny Pickett does not count. I get it. Najee Harris. George Pickens was at dinner the year before he actually got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Cam Hayward went out to dinner with the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a long list of guys who the Steelers look at and say, yeah, I'm going to spend some extra time getting to know you. The quarterback position seems to be the biggest one. And you run through the list of Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, who they met beforehand, but still counts. They made the effort. They made the time for him. They got snubbed, New Orleans, obviously, higher draft pick. Who else am I missing? Will Howard. Will Howard's on that list. Jaxson Dart, my friend, is not. I don't think that rules anything out when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers and Jaxson Dart. But I do think that as this flows and as this continues, you do have to, pick up the breadcrumbs. We're getting to the time of the year where the draft is less than a month away, a month yesterday, actually, and 28 days as of yesterday or as of today. You start to piece things together. You're starting to get a real understanding, a real grip on how this NFL draft is looking. There's a lot of talk about Pittsburgh going after Jaxson Dart, a lot of mock drafts with Jaxson Dart in them. I don't know if the Steelers have that interest, and it sure seems like them not taking him out to dinner, them not showing their hands a little bit, just a little bit, kind of feels like maybe Jaxson Dart isn't the guy that they are totally sold on in 2025. And I don't know who else's pro days are today, but I don't know if they're an Ole Miss. And if they are not, that tells you everything you need to know. If they are and they didn't take him out to dinner, maybe I'm reading the tea leaves too much, but they're there. They are definitely there. I don't know. No Jaxson Dart dinner. I don't know when Louisville's is. I'd be very curious to know if they're going to take Tyler Shuck out, because I think that would speak volumes. You want to shut down Jaxson Dart rumors? You take Tyler Shuck out to dinner. Nobody's thinking you have any interest in Jaxson Dart. Am I reading the tea leaves too much? They're there, but am I going too deep on this?
I think there's a third door that you haven't explored here, and that is that the Steelers are looking at this from a realistic perspective. Last year, after the Senior Bowl, everybody said Michael Penix looked awful.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix looked awful. They're third-round picks, maybe second at most. They both went in the top 15. Yep. And that's a similar trajectory to what we're seeing from Jaxson Dart, because he didn't have a bad Senior Bowl. He had a great Senior Bowl, and everything since then has just progressed at light speed. I've seen mock drafts. I think I said it earlier this week. Mel Kiper has him going 9th to the New Orleans Saints. 9th. That's 12 spots away from where the Steelers can even sniff Jaxson Dart. So I think maybe they're looking at this realistically and saying, if he's already that high in a year where, listen, people really want young quarterbacks, it's probably unrealistic unless we trade the farm, which you should not do in this draft for a quarterback. But unless they trade the farm to move up, Jaxson Dart is probably not going to be available.
I agree. I agree with that. I do look at it that way, which is why Tyler Shuck is a name for me that you got to pay attention to, because the first round interest that we're all coming up with and trying to wrap our heads around one way or another, decide if we believe in or don't believe in it, it does not come down to Jaxson Dart in my eyes. It comes down to Tyler Shuck. Is Tyler Shuck going to be there at 21? And if he is, are the Steelers worthy of grabbing him? Are the Steelers or is he worthy of going to the Pittsburgh Steelers? Do they view him as a first round pick? I think that's the name, because we could, just like you said, like Jaxson Dart could end up 6th. Jaxson Dart could end up 21st. We have it's going to go all over the board. And if you're talking Shedeur Sanders fall into the Steelers, which I've seen as many times as I've seen Jaxson Dart go top 10, then anything is possible when it comes to Jaxson Dart. I don't expect him to be there at 21. I do kind of expect Tyler Shuck to. And I don't know. Can we look up when that pro day is, when Louisville's pro day is? Because I think that speaks volumes. That's the next one we're watching here to say, hey, do the Pittsburgh Steelers have interest in a first-round quarterback? Because if they do, it's not Jalen Milroe. It's not Will Howard. It's not Quinn Ewers. It's Tyler Shuck. And they might be into Tyler Shuck. We got a date?
Yeah, it was listed past Tuesday, and it says all 32 teams were represented.
Yeah,
so
well, there was no dinner. There was no dinner. We missed the boat, but that's because they were taken out on Tuesday. They were going to Tuesday, I believe. Tuesday morning was Ohio State, so they were not there. Read the tea leaves, guys. Steelers don't have that interest in a first-round quarterback, which makes the Jalen Milroe thing yesterday we talked about just a little bit more solidified that they do not view him as a first-round quarterback. There are reports going out, and shout out to Fear the Beard here, that Jaxson Dart is coming to Pittsburgh. Now, I want to give my boy Mike DeFabo credit because he is the one that reported it, not Steelers Depot. Shout out to DeFabo, and shout out to Jaxson Dart and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't think that changes my thought on not having dinner with them. Pre-draft visits are big and important. The Steelers, they use pre-draft visits differently than dinners. They bring in the guys that Marcus Jones. That's who they bring in on. That's the best example I could come up with. A guy that they needed. They needed a Marcus Jones. He was an answer for them to replace Mike Hilton at the time and really solidify that cornerback position in the second, maybe the third round. Made a lot of sense to bring that guy in. From everything I've been told, they had interest in him, but not a ton. They were just they were trying to create that interest. They use a lot of these pre-draft visits for that, And sometimes it's just checking out everybody. Sometimes it's not checking out anybody at all. And we'll see what the final list looks like. But Tyler Shuck's also on that list. You want to know who isn't on that list right now? Who could emerge? Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Will Howard, which I believe would be a local visit. But all of those names. And you got to read that as well as, okay, they're adding the guys that they missed. Pro days are important, and they mean nothing. You're not watching them to prove anything, but you're there to understand them, to learn from their coaches, to do that kind of. That's what a pro day is networking for the Steelers, to learn more about these players that they wouldn't pick up just meeting with the players. That's what they're looking for. And pre-draft visits are different. Again, it's important, definitely significant. I don't think it changes my mind on the dinner.
Yeah. Two things here. One, for pro days, I think another small piece to this, and again, every NFL franchise looks at pro days in a different light. How often do you see other head coaches, as at least widely talked about as Mike Tomlin, what he does at these pro days? But I think one of the biggest things for them, especially with the quarterback, is seeing them in their own element, because you're seeing them at the Senior Bowl. They are plucked out of their element and thrown into a 1-week sprint to get to the Senior Bowl game. At the Combine, they are surrounded by everybody else in tights, basically, and said, hey, go out there and do this in this controlled environment that is completely foreign to you. Yes. Seeing how they operate, seeing how they kind of move around the facility, in the facility that they've been in for at least a year, maybe 2 years. Yep. I think there's value in that for a lot of NFL franchises. And then number two, when it comes to pre-draft visits, the only thing I'll push back on is, was that not the first time we heard the name Mason McCormick last year, when we looked at the list of pre-draft visits to Pittsburgh and said, Mason McCormick?
True.
They're bringing in a guy from North Dakota? What are we doing? And then all of a sudden, 4th round, there's Mason McCormick, and it's like, I guess the clues were there. We just did not know it at the time.
I agree. I definitely agree. I think there's a little bit difference with the quarterback situation, as in, Cam Ward is a prime example here. The whole, I'm here to solidify that I'm the number 1 pick in the draft. Okay. Whereas that you get that jazz in those moments that I think at the quarterback position you kind of need. But I hear you 100%. Mason McCormick's a prime example of why I'm wrong on that. So I hear you. We'll see what happens. Jaxson Dart to me is a name, but I'm so curious about what the Steelers think of him, and I just don't know if they're that high on him as we want them to be, or maybe don't want them to be, depending on what side of the line you're on.